Good morning, all. I'm Akila. A very warm welcome to one and all present here. Good morning. Once again, welcoming you all.
KMM College is really happy to see so many of you from Philippines. A really big and great good morning to all the ones who joined from Philippines. Thank you so much.
behind all the success of KM so far, Principal Mr. P.V. Sumit shows. Then, the incredible leader of our college, our academic director, Dr. Naushad PM Sir. Next, welcoming our chief guest of today's webinar, Ms. Poornima. Was a software automation test engineer with an experience of 7 plus years, having a solid understanding on testing life cycle and experience in various automation tools and methodologies of the testing platform for web and mobile applications. I'm proudly welcoming our biggest supporter and kind-hearted HOD, Ms. Nisha. Last but not the least, our loving teachers, non-teaching staffs, and dear friends. Here are some instructions for you. Kindly turn off the cameras and mute yourselves. We have a question and answer session, and for that, you are requested to post queries on the chat window as well as unmute the mic when asked. By the end of this session, you will get a feedback form. Kindly fill the form and certificates will be provided in 3 to 4 days. I'm handing over this auspicious moment to our HOD, Ms. Nishamul ma'am, to welcome the delivered speech.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Miss.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. Today, all of us have joined here for the prestigious event organized by the Department of Computer Science, a national webinar on Introduction to Automation and Testing Tools. I feel highly privileged to be in this session, and my duty is to welcome you all to this event. First, I would like to welcome our principal, Dr. P.V. Sumitran sir, to this event. Next, let me extend a warm welcome to our academic director, Dr. P.M. Naushad sir, our vice principal, Dr. Anip K. Jose sir, our management representative, Sapna ma'am, to this event. Next, it's the time to invite the chief guest of this event, Ms. Poornima Venu, who is working as Senior Software Testing Engineer at Tata Consultancy Services. She has more than 7 years of experience in this field. We are immensely happy and honored to have Ms. Poornima Venu is our speaker for the day. Next, I would like to invite all the faculty members and students of KMM College to this session. The success of this program lies in the active participation of all those who joined to attend the session. I extend my wholehearted welcome to all the participants joined for the session. So, I hope by this session we can understand and explore various areas in automation, tools, and platforms for testing. Once again, I welcome one and all to this session, especially from Philippines. Thank you for joining. Now, I invite Ms. Poornima Venu to take over this session. Thank you.
Thank you all for your wishes. Let me start my session.
Ms. Poornima Venu?
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I hope everyone are able to see my.
Ma'am, we can hear you, but we can't see your video.
Okay, are you able to see now? I'm
It's
presenting my.
yeah,
I'm
it's
Yes,
presenting my.
yeah, it's there, it's there.
yes, screen is visible.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody, and thanks all for your wishes. Uh, so here, as you all know, that I'm working in the software industry for more than 7 years. Currently, I'm working at Tata Consultancy Services as a software automation engineer, where most of my tasks rely on the automation tools, automating different applications, and then test test them by in each of the testing cycles. So, uh, as we all know that you all are, most of you are learning about the computer application and the aspirants of the software industry waiting to jump into the software development, software development and other categories in the software development area. So most of you must be heard of the software development and and the technologies that has been used to develop a software. But when we learn about the testing life cycle, or sorry, the software development life cycle, we all know that there are different stages within that, and one of the stages is uh, that the the software testing. But we do not know that we might have never explored what we will be doing within the software testing. So that is the reason I chose this topic, especially the automation of test automation tools and how to test, what to test, and what is the what are the advantages of the testing, and what happens if there is any what happens if there is any lack of testing happens within a software development life cycle. Okay, so let's see what is software testing. So, as the name indicates, we all know that after the development of a software, we all need to check whether the software which you have developed is meeting all the requirements that software is intended to be. So, software testing is a method used to check whether the actual software product matches the expected requirements, and also want to see that nothing is broken within that software. So, once the just before you all may think that we just develop the software, and then just before releasing it to the customer or to the clients, we just do the software testing, and then if there is any defects are found, then we'll just fix it, and then let's do one more level of testing and then pass it to the customer. But it's not like that. So at every stages of a software development life cycle, we will do the testing. So earlier we used to follow some methods called waterfall method. So that means once you develop your testing requirements, you just do the requirement gathering, and then you will do the test planning, and then you will find out what are the areas you need to be developed and to be tested, and then you just begin with the software development, and once after the development you just start the testing. But right now in the current industry that is not the case. Everybody start like all of the software uh, life cycle, in all of the stages of the software life cycle, we will do the software testing. Even it in the case of software requirement, test planning, or in the case of development. And so after the release, so even after the release, people do the production testing to ensure that there is no bugs available in the production area. So that is what called the software testing. So it's kind of an investigation of the software to ensure that the quality under test is in line with this requirement of the client. So if we lag anything over there, or if we miss to test any software or anything that can be not went well, then it will affect the quality of the product, and that will again delay the delivery, and then that will lead to an unsatisfied customer service, and that also increases the cost. So when you work in a software, even it is developing for your purpose or for any customer purpose, definitely testing is a mandatory stage. So when we test, we say that we test the application, but is that true? Let's see what needs to be tested. So when a software in the testing happens, what can be tested? So it can be GUI, that means the graphical user interface, and it can be the accessibility of that software, design of the software, efficiency, modularity, or user friendliness, security, and other than that, there are so many other things like performance of your application, and this as we mentioned, this security, and so there are so many different types of testings are available. And when we classify the software when we classify the software testing, there are majorly two different levels of testing. First one is the functional testing and the non-functional testing. So the functional testing is nothing but the functional. We will be testing the functional flow of this application. So that means what is the software is intended for? Let's take Amazon.com. So when you test Amazon.com, you should be the major purpose is like go through your go through the you should be able to search or find the product and click on the product and see what are the details of the product, and then click on the add to cart button, and the product should be on your cart, and then clicking continue, you should be proceeded with the payment and placing the order. So this is called the functional flow of an application. So the functional flow, so the testing, the functional flow is called the functional testing, and under that there are multiple levels called unit testing, integration testing, system testing, interface testing, regression testing, user acceptance testing. So unit testing will be like you are developing the code. So before you integrate all the parts of that product, you should be able to do a one round of testing to make sure that there is no bug within the code. And then integration testing will be performed once after you develop and integrate with all other services like backend and frontend and all the middleware. Then you should make sure that nothing is broken while testing. And similar to that is the system testing, and interface testing is also kind of testing the APIs and all those things which comes under that. And regression testing is majorly done within all the software industry. That once you because when you develop a huge software, you cannot create it within one go. So after developing some of the modules of the project, and then you start testing it, then you find some defects. Once it fixes happen, then you should test that defect is the what is broken is working fine, but at the time of fixing this defect, there is many chances that it break other functionalities of that working product. So you should make sure that other functionalities are working fine. So that is what called the regression testing. And then comes to user acceptance testing, which is like you are started you have delivered a product, or you just completed all the system testing and integration testing, but you want to see that the look and feel of that product is right, or it is meeting the expectation of the customer. So that is called the user acceptance testing. So for all these levels, some of them are having some additional categories. So I'm not describing that here. So that means it is more deeper when it goes into it. So that is called the functional testing, and then here comes the non-functional testing. So non-functional testing is something which is not related to the functional flow. It is related to the performance and other parts like the security, accessibility, stress testing kind of things. Um, Okay, that is what mentioned here. So first one is a performance testing, documentation testing, installation testing. So performance testing, that means when you start working with this application, you may not be you may not be the one working with this application at the same time, right? When so let's take the same example, Amazon.com. So across the world, multiple people are working with that same product uh, within within a moment. So you should make sure that your application is capable of taking this many number of people at the same time, and it is not breaking anywhere. So in order to test that, we use the performance testing, and installation testing is at the time if the software needs to install anything on the backend, then that works fine. Especially on mobile application testing, you should definitely do the installation testing that to make sure the software is installed in the mobile without any problem. And then the security testing is to make sure that your software is secured from or other malware or other viruses. So the performance testing itself, if you look, there are multiple levels in that. One is load testing, stress testing, endurance testing, and spike testing. So these all are required to make sure that your performance of your application is well and good. So we saw that is what is called the testing. So then we know that there are two types of testing. We can do it either manually, or right now we are having automation, many automation tools in the industry. Manual testing is something called test cases will be executed by a human tester. So each the person will go through the requirements, and they test against each and every pages and each and every object within that page, each and every functionality within that application. So that is called the manual testing. But where in automation testing, there is no need of a human has to sit and check manually each and every pages. Instead of that, they will be evolving automation tool and develop some of the automated scripts. So here they need they should need the programming language knowledge, and using any programming language, they will create the automated steps, and then they will write the test cases. They will automate the test cases, and then once that is completed, we can just execute the test cases through the automation tool, and then it tests automatically that application. So here it is like usually you will be one person will be sitting and go through. So okay, let me explain what is a test case. So test case is something, it's kind of a rule you said, like you will be having a description for the test case, that what are you going to test. For example, in the when we take the Amazon.com application, you are testing the add to cart page. So you are testing the add to cart button. So your intention with that particular button is that when you click, it should add that product into the cart. So that is called a test case. So you have an expectation of what you do with that particular button, and there should be there should be something actually happens when you test with that, when you perform that action. So it is like, so the same thing you will be converting into some test scripts, that clicking on that button, and you will be, it will be verifying whether that action that was intended to happen is happening or not. So so everything will be automated when it comes to an automation testing. And so because of this task, the manual testing will be a little time consuming, and it needs a lot of human resources to complete that manual testing. But where in automation testing, here you, since one person can automate something, and so doesn't once you automate, you don't need to, you don't require that person again to execute that test case again when it comes to automate again and execute again and again. So it is little faster, and you don't need multiple number of human resources. And manual testing shows lower accuracy due to higher possibilities of human errors. But here, once it is higher accuracy because it's a computer-based testing. So once you set that checks, it will automatically do that task without any manual intervention. But it is also error prone, because when you are not, your scripts are not that efficient to identify, or that efficient to verify some of the checks within the application. So the manual testing takes more time to complete the cycle of testing. But here, when it comes to automation testing, since you have already created a list of test scripts, already generate test scripts, you can reuse it. So when it comes to some repeated testing cycle, it will take less time, as well as you don't take much time to develop the test scripts again, so that you have to just execute it. So the testing will be completed within a recorded time. And manual testing need more cost, as it involves hiring of expert professionals. Whereas once you start developing the test cases, you may need human resources. But once you developed it, you may not require that many number of people to test your application. And one thing is here, that exploratory testing is possible in manual testing. That means once you test an application, you don't need to go with the requirements. Sometimes you can just go ahead and click on this button or other buttons and check whether that is working. But in automation testing, that may not be possible, because you already has written, already has created the test scripts that needs to be tested with the application. So only that will be tested. So this graph shows what is the cost difference with the automation and manual testing. So as the number of as we develop the application, you get more number of pages and more number of functionalities within the applications. Thus, the manual testing cost also get increased. But here in automation testing, at the beginning, the cost will be increased because of you need to develop the test scripts. But you are developing and storing it so that you can reuse it. So later point, you don't require that much cost to execute and maintain the scripts. So here is a representation of how the manual testing comes happening. So the manual testing will be done in different sets of data. For example, when you take a registration of some application, so you need to always enter the same details: name, address, place, pin code, and everything. So when you want to test with 100 users, manually you need to enter with each and every data at each time. And then you will be tired of entering all these things and testing the same data, same process again and again. But when it comes to automation testing, you create one automated test to enter to register this application by identifying by providing all the required fields on that page, and then you also pass a set of data. That means you pass the details of 100 um, people, and then it automatically run that test cases with by taking this 100 users, and then automatically generate complete that registration process for 100 users. And then not only that, after the execution it provides you a test results file, and then also generate a report. But when it comes to manual, you should create a result. That means you should mark what has happened with the test case. Is it pass or fail? And then after completing your test, you should generate a report. Maybe you should present it to your higher management. So why to use automation testing tools in accelerated development cycles? So there are multiple multiple advantages of the automation testing. That is a reason right now, currently, most of the companies are requiring the automated testing within their organization. So these are the some points. First thing is that you can schedule your test execution 24/7. So you don't need to go ahead and click that button to start the execution. Instead of that, right now we are having some test scheduling methods. Using that, you can just schedule it for a time, and then it automatically runs at that time. And reusability of automated test cases that we mentioned already, and powerful test reports to help you analyze hundreds of test cases with ease. Ability to perform testing on multiple platforms, in that too in parallel, and execute the test right after the deployment in a continuous integration or continuous deployment pipeline. And developers see errors more quickly when they use automated tests on each build, and thus they are able to fix them earlier and at a lower cost. So here, since it is worked with the programming languages and all, so we can integrate it with a deployment of an application into any of the environment, like into a test environment or into a production environment, so that once after the deployment itself, this test will automatically runs and gives a result. So there is no need of a tester to be part of the deployment, because your test cases are already running automatically. So that is the reason it is saying that you can fix them earlier with a minimum cost. And human testers don't need to check each new feature in the application. Rather, the auto regression test makes sure that the newly implemented features do not negatively impact the features from the earlier builds. And then it saves a lot of time, accelerate the result, and reduce the business cost and better utilization of the manpower. And also improves the quality of manual test cases, maximizing the test coverage, and shift left testing done better, and maximizing the return of investment of business since there is a low cost, and accelerate cross browser testing. So this point is important. So manually when we test, you will be performing one test that is in one browser, but here in case you can run the same test cases in any of the browser you want. You can run in Chrome, Safari, Mozilla, anywhere you want to. But if you want to do that in the manual testing, the effort of testing in one browser will be multiplied when you test it in other browsers as well. And then easy to perform the smooth testing after each build. Smooth testing is something it's a quick testing to make sure that your application is not broken after each build. Build in the sense after the development, they will deploy into an environment. So so this type of testing will make sure that after the deployment, your entire application is not crashed. For example, your application has a login screen. So if you want to start with that application, the login page should work. But sometimes the deployment may crash the login page itself. But the smoke testing ensure that this page works so that they don't need to proceed with any. So, for example, if you are doing the smoke testing, then you can make sure that you can proceed with the other types of testing or other types of development with that. Because if this page works, only then you can proceed with only there is a use to continue with the other testing within that application. And data driven testing. So data driven testing is something which I told that you can test one test case using multiple data. So example, the registration process, one flow, but you can test with multiple data. Distributed test execution. So you are performing a test in one. You are performing test execution in one computer, but you can split your test cases and run it in multiple computers so that you can at the same time simultaneously you can run multiple tests and reduce the time and cost. Complex and lengthy test scenarios. You can develop the lengthy scenarios and test it with less time. And scalability. You can make any changes within that test automation that you have already automated. And when we talk about the advantages, there are some disadvantages as well for the automation testing. So that we are going to discuss over here. So initially, it costs more to automate. Yes, as I said, so there is nothing when there is nothing or is automated for an application. So if you want to start from the scratch, you should definitely need more number of resources and it takes more cost. Cannot automate the image validations, captcha, etc. So till now we can't automate the captcha or image validation. But right now we are having some of the automated tools which uses some third-party tools to test the images, but not completely. And difficult to detect look and feel issue and usability issues. So this is again, so the look and feel things can be, I mean, earlier it was completely, we could not test this look and feel, but right now we are having some visual regression testing and all automated, so that right now we are having some of the, some of the look and feel automation as well. And if the user interfaces changes extensively, again the script maintenance to be done. So you know that when you develop the script, it all depends upon what is there on your application. So if you make any changes, first, for example, you had a button on the you had a button which is having some properties, but then later development has to change some of the properties of this button. For example, the button was having a continue as a button text, but later they changed it to submit. So then you already automated some test cases by using that button, and then once the developer change it, your test will fail, because when your test runs, it will look for that continue button, but right now it is submit. So there is a maintenance is needed in that cases, and then similarly, so this is a minute change, but if your entire project structure is getting changed, or the requirement is getting changed, then there requires more maintenance, and then the same initial cost will be required here as well. And false sense of quality. So sometimes the script is not perfectly designed. There is a false sense, false reporting happens. Sometimes it may not pass, but then it report pass. So when you develop the scripts, you should make sure that it works in multiple. You should think, and your logic should be proper within the test case. And automation is not 100%. Yes, obviously, because as a manual tester sits and execute a test, that much that 100, it will be 100%. We can ensure that. But when it a computer relayed testing happens, then it will not be 100% because some cases, the test may, as I said, the false reporting, all these things can happen. Need time and effort for continuous maintenance. So even though you created an application, but there will be some changes to that application. So even though we say that we can reuse the test cases which are automated, but there will be some maintenance once in every quarter or something. And when to automate. So now we know what is automation testing and what do we do with the automation testing and what are the things can be automated for the testing. But now we need to see when to automate. So can we automate at the very beginning stage of that application, or how do we do? So the requirements do not change frequently. Only at that situation you should start your automation. Because, as we mentioned this before, that your requirement is getting changed frequently. That you do not have a fixed plan what to be developed part of your application. So they just develop something, and then on the next month they comes and change the entire pattern of the page or the entire fields and working flow of the page. Then automation will not work there. So you should be stable. Your software should be steady when you start developing the automated test. And you should not be start automating when you have very less time for testing. You should have some availability of time, proper availability of time when you decide to start automation. And that needs to be test the same areas often. That means you created some automated test, but then you are not going to test that page anymore. Then there is no use of creating that kind of automated test, right? So you should be creating. You should be fine tune your test cases and then choose from that which are the regularly used test cases. Or it can be a regression test or some other kind of test cases. Only those type of test cases should be automated. And then retesting pre-existing application functions that are being carried forward to a new versions or environment. Yeah. So when you versioning your application, you can automate the test cases. You can automate that application because that will be useful to make sure that your previous application, all the fields and flows of the previous application is not changed or properly changed when you have when you are testing a new version or in a new environment. Okay. And then same functions need to be validated within lots of different inputs and large set of data. So that we have already discussed. And then load and performance testing. So there is still we do not have any mechanism to test the load and performance testing without an automation. It is always an automated testing. Okay, so this is the dynamics of the automation testing. The first, like the stages in when you perform an automation testing. So the first step itself, determine which part to automate, and then you choose the right tool that fulfills all the requirements, and then you prepare the test scripts and develop the test suites and execute the test cases, then acquire a detailed test report, and then you identify the bugs and performance errors. Then it will be given to the development to fix the issue. Then if after the fixing you can run your test cases once again to make sure that everything is fixed. So this is how will be an automated or manual test stages goes. So till now we were talking about what are the automation, what is automation and when to do and what to do with the automation things. testing. But let's discuss some popular automation tools. Okay, so when it comes to some of the tools, you know that there are some open source as well as some licensed tools within the industry. So the licensed tool means you should pay the company for using that tool uh, for the automation. But if it is open source, you can just download it, download the jars and files, and then start your own automation. So here you can see that Selenium is a major open source automation tool, and it is very popular too. It has a lot many capabilities that we'll be discussing soon. And WebDriver.io, Protractor, Cypress.io, Cucumber, all these are the latest open source tools available in the market. And here comes the licensed tools. So UFT1, UFT Mobile, Tricentis, Appium, all these are the licensed tools. Sorry, Appium is not a licensed tool. It's again open source. Okay, so let's see what is the Selenium WebDriver. The Selenium WebDriver is one of the most popular automated testing suites, and it is an open source browser-based test automation software. And Selenium is just like it has it's a package of several testing tools that is referred as the Selenium WebDriver. So using Selenium, so it can use any languages. So it supports multiple programming languages. So when you are having, so it is quite similar to how you develop your development script. The similar way you will be developing some automation script, but you may not require that many like server level programming knowledge in order to develop the Selenium, in order to develop your automation script. But basic programming language knowledge is mandatory. So when you develop the automation script using Selenium, you will be having kind of with the browser using so nowadays it's everything a web application tool, right? So web applications will work online, like in a you can open it in a browser. So when you open it in a browser, you can refer what are the page objects are available. So your automation starts there, that identifying the object and its property, and then using this property you are creating the test scripts using a programming language, marking that what action to be performed with this particular button. So do you need to write into that text box, or you want to click on the button? Everything you should be mentioned using your test scripts. So how does it work? So it usually interact with any UI object by using the locators and HTML properties. So it is very simple that after when the developers develop a UI object, they develop it with some properties like ID, name, class, and some other properties. So here you should track all that properties and then just decide what to do with that object. So that when you execute the test, it first the test script using WebDriver client library interact with all the browsers. Like if you're running in Firefox, it interacts with the Firefox driver. Otherwise, if it is IE driver or Chrome driver, and then it will send the request to this browser and get the response back from the web client, and then provide the results. So that is what happens when you execute the test. Other features of Selenium are it supports almost every OS. You can create the test. You can perform the test automation in Windows or in Linux, and it is an open source and cost-effective automation testing, and supports multiple programming languages and independent of web application programming language. So that means you develop Python for developing your application, but you can use Java for developing your automated script. So you don't require the knowledge of Python to develop the automation scripts for a an application developed by Python, and supports multiple browsers, more options to find an object, and OOPS support, object-oriented programming support, like a keyword-driven, data-driven, and hybrid-driven framework, and provide support for open source frameworks like TestNG, JUnit, and NUnit, and parallel execution. So these are the major features of Selenium. As we mentioned, it supports multiple languages like Java, C Sharp, PHP, Ruby, Perl, and Python, and supports Windows, Mac, Linux, and Android, iOS. And it runs in multiple browsers at the same time. Okay, so that is all about Selenium. And after the Selenium has came into the industry, so there are different open source tools came into picture by using it uses the custom implementation of Selenium's WebDriver API, but it provides more features. So one of that kind of automation tool is WebDriver.io. So it is written in JavaScript. So it uses the same mechanism to run the test, to create and execute the test automation scripts. So here the test scripts created using WebDriver.io, but you should use some kind of framework. So when you develop a Java program, like a Java application, you use some different frameworks within that, right? Like JSP, So similarly, here in test automation, there are multiple frameworks are available like Mocha, Cucumber, Chai. All these are different test automation frameworks. So when you use any of these automation tools, you should need the support from this type of frameworks. And then, since this is working using the JavaScript, you need the Node.js support as well. And then it runs in, it uses the Selenium standalone server and interact with the browsers and then get the response back from the web UI. And some features of WebDriver.io are mentioned here. So as I said, most of them are using derived from Selenium, but they are providing additional features to the users. So that type of features are like it supports various services, and it supports multiple frameworks like Cucumber, Mocha, Jasmine, and also supports different types of reports. So the reports are like Allure report. So this is an example of a report. So it shows that what are the tests ran while running your automation script, and how many of them are passed, how many of them are failed. It gives a trends graph as well as a graph that how many of them are what are the status of the test cases. So it easily shows what are the result of the test execution. And the next one is UFT1. So as I mentioned, it's a licensed tool. So it was earlier owned by HP, but now acquired by Micro Focus. And this tool supports both functional and API testing, and supports multiple browsers, and it also supports the desktop-based application. So when it comes to Selenium or WebDriver.io, it supports only web-based application, but here in UFT1, it also supports the desktop-based application. That means applications which needs to be installed in your machine and then used. So here there are some, when compared to Selenium, it won't support multiple languages. It only supports VB script, and it only supports its own IDE. That means where it works, like it won't support any Eclipse or any other IDEs. It needs its own IDE, and it won't support cross platforms. That means it supports only Windows. and it's a licensed tool. So these are the some drawbacks of this UFT. So right now we have seen web application testing, but there are some now it's a mobile app time, right? So currently there are so many mobile applications are being developed. We should also test these applications as well. So if within the mobile application testing, you can do regression testing, capability testing, integration testing, usability testing, performance testing, and functional testing. So whatever testing you can do with the web application, you can also do it with mobile application testing. But also there are some additional kind of testing that needs to be done within mobile applications as well. So when it comes to mobile automation, there are two types. One is mobile browser automation. That means some of the applications you can open within a mobile browser, but some of them cannot be opened within the mobile browser. But you need to install an app to use that mobile application. So when you test, you should we should have the capability to test both type of applications. So when it comes to mobile testing, you can do that manually, similar to how do we perform the manual application. But currently we are having the mobile automation tools as well, right in the industry. So one of the one of the popular tool that is used for mobile application testing is called Appium. So Appium is that gives us the capability to test Android and iOS, and it does not require app code recompilation, and it allows users to use the real devices or emulators or simulators. So that means you can use a real device to test your application by connecting to Appium, or if you do not have a mobile, for example, sometimes your application will be developed to work on only on some of the versions of app. Like it is developed for iPhone 10 to 14. But you do not have iPhone 10 with you or iPhone 12 with you. Then that doesn't mean that you cannot test it, right? So you can use emulators and simulators that will mimic your iPhone, that version of that iPhone, so that you can continue with the test within that emulators or simulators. And it also provides a record and playback tool, so that if you do not know the programming languages, um, then there is an option as well, like to record and playback. So where it allows you to just navigate through the application, and then it records that navigation as a programming language, and it gives you a script. But in that case, it will just give you what action you have performed, but the later changes you can make as your own. So that gives that capability as well. And it supports several programming languages like Python, Ruby, JavaScript, Java, PHP, and C Sharp. And it's an open source tool as well. Okay, so that's all about Appium. And then other than the mobile testing and web application testing, there are other type of testing methods that are available. One is called the visual regression. So visual regression is something called, as we mentioned earlier, that we did not have, we have never had the, testing of the look and feel of an application, but now using automation testing techniques, you can do the visual regression. So where it shows like if there is any changes of the objects on your screen has happened after when you test it, or when you test against with a requirement. So, for example, like see, it was earlier. So the position of some buttons were here, but then after an update, it got changed, or it just pushed down towards towards the screen. So by might be by a look, when looking at that, you may not understand it, but then using the visual regression, you will be able to find it, because it uses some coordinates and all, and to identify the position of the objects on the screen, and then provides you the results. And another type of testing is called accessibility testing. Accessibility testing is something like, there are some uh, specially abled people, like some are with some disability to their eyes, some are disabled to their, like, they can't hear properly. So for those type of people, nowadays we are having laws, that when you develop an application, it should be that should be able to um, be used by any kind of people. So even it is a disabled person or a specially abled person also should be able to use that application. In US, there is a there are strict laws that make sure that the applications are developed in that way, so that nowadays everybody are, in every organization, they are started doing accessibility testing without any fail. So in that case, you will be able to see that, like, for example, for a person who is unable to see properly, like, he can see, but his visibility is less. So in that case, he cannot recognize some of the lightly colored text or buttons on the screen, so that your color patterns should be in line with the accessibility laws, and you should develop in such a way. So an accessibility tester will make sure that, yeah, your application has been developed by following the accessibility laws. So that is called that is one kind of testing. Another thing is RPA automation. So RPA, like, robotic process automation. So till now we were talking about the automation where we will develop the scripts and then we run that scripts. But in RPA, it's kind of since it's a robotic process, so that tool will be already having some kind of technology, like some kind of inbuilt methods or inbuilt way to test some clicking on a button or all those things to perform. You have to just drag and drop these methods and then configure it according to your application. So the test will easily run without making much changes, or even though you don't have the programming language knowledge, the robotic process automation type of tools will enable you to run your, like, test your application very easily. These are some examples of how the RPA executes the process automatically. So it is like you have to just mention what to be tested, and then so these all are the things will work when you run a similar kind of test cases again and again. So that's all about that's all about the session. I hope that everybody has understood or got some idea about what is there in the testing, So, do you have any questions?
Ma'am, ma'am,
Yes.
a participant raised a question.
Okay.
It's about, if we develop an automation testing application for a particular project, shall we reuse it or we create new testing application for next project?
Okay, that's a good question. So, in some cases, if that automation test cases might not be used completely for a different application. For example, it's a if that project is somewhat similar a similar product, like if it's an Amazon and Flipkart. Let's take these two examples, and then you develop some test cases to test Amazon. Then when it comes to test Flipkart, you can reuse some of the test cases, but there will be some maintenance, but still reusability will be there. And especially when it comes to test automation, most of the reusable part will be its framework, because when you start before you start developing your test automation, you should have some setup, like some prerequisite setup within the test automation using that tool. So this setup can be reused within multiple projects. So yes, it has that capability.
Okay, ma'am, we have another question.
Okay.
Capture cannot be tested using automation tools, then how we are doing it?
Okay, so most of the cases, if there is a captcha has to be tested, then it used to do manually. So it's not a testing kind of thing. So captcha will be auto generated, but you can't look and enter these values into the box using automation. So that is the reason we say that test automation cannot handle captcha. In that case, we usually use manual automation, manually enter the captcha.
Thank you, ma'am. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves and ask, or you can post it on chat window. You are requested to post queries on the chat window as well as unmute the mic when asked. Hope you all got your replies. Kindly fill the form you see in chat window. Thank you, ma'am, for the time you spent for us and for your wonderful words. Thanking every one of you present here. Have a good day, all.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.